First, I apologize to the audience and the community for the delay in starting the meeting. We had urgent legal matters that we had to attend to. And a picture for the yearbook. All right, yeah, you all understand that. All right, we're beginning with a. Do we have a review of this before the committee here?
Yes.
Okay, we were starting with a review of the feedback from the web posting, the Smart Schools Bond Act investment plan. And after that, you'll have an opportunity for comments on it, but we're starting with the review. So you know what other comments people have put forward. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, Mr. Carrion. This comment opens up the public hearing for the Smart Schools Bond Act implementation plan that the district has posted on its website since December 15th. This is really just a continuation from our December 14th meeting where we presented on our Smart Schools Bond Act implementation plan, which included funds allocated for the acquisition of interactive display technology for every classroom in our district that does not have one, as well as the replacement or repair of devices that are currently in place that are not functioning very well. This also includes allocations for putting in district-wide intrusion cores, which were new lock sets on all of our interior doors that would allow district personnel to lock doors and create a physical safe space behind just about every door in every building using a key that they already are issued by the district. And as an update to this plan so far, we spent the last 30-plus days interfacing with vendors and just getting some preliminary research out of the way and going forward with some proposals ahead of an anticipated approval both by the Board of Education as well as the State Ed Department for Smart Schools Bond Act. So we also had, as part of a requirement for this final approval by our board, a 30-day comment period which has been open to the public. We communicated it out to all of our stakeholders via school messenger. We've had it posted on our website. We had an email address listed for comments to be made. I included a summary of all the comments and responses in your Ms. Pedro, and she included it in your board packets. There were not very many comments. Most of the comments were not actually addressed towards the plan itself, just public comments about things that they would like to see added and the like. So, you know, the responses there were basically real time. Within a couple of days of receiving them, we notified them of our plans to, if there were comments that were applicable to Smart Schools Bond Act, we bring it to the committee and share it with them. And that's really about it. Going forward, what we could look forward to is hopefully getting a fairly quick approval from State Ed. If they approve it, then I'll be working with Mrs. Crandall on the purchasing plan to start rolling out some of these solutions, and the district then, upon invoice, could then submit the invoice to the state, and the state within 90 days will reimburse us for any expenditures based on approval from State Ed. Kind of it, if anyone.
Mrs. Pelton?
I just have one quick question. First, I'd like to thank and applaud the committee on deciphering two areas of significant need in our district. As I recall from a previous presentation, you talked about the key system and safety being absolutely a top priority. Could you walk through the protocol of using the key system for the doors for me, please?
I wouldn't go into so much detail as I'm sure it would be written into our school safety plan. Do you have a specific question in terms of?
I just keep coming back to there's in a situation where that would be required, how expeditiously that would need to be required. I just keep seeing who's got the key and where are you at.
And that's the best part, because anyone who has any key that's owned by the district will be able to make that function. You don't need the key, it is any key. That's the magic of it.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. Lokema. Yes, that's what we're doing. We'll do that next. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. At this time, we have public comments, community input on this specific topic. We have 30 minutes allotted. This is one of the issues that is required to have a public hearing. And although we have had 30 days of comments when people could send in comments and ask questions, there's an opportunity now also for any member of the public who wishes to get up and speak about the Smart Schools Bond Act investment plan, about the different things that have been presented on how we're spending the money. As is true during the other public comment periods, you have 3 minutes, and it must be about this topic. So if you would like to speak on it, please come forward, state your name, and tell us within a limit of 3 minutes. All right? Is there anyone who wishes to speak at this time? Thank you.
Ed Slopeshower, Town of East Fishkill. Good evening. Board President, Superintendent, board members in the community. I just have a brief comment with regards to the public hearings. We're trying to communicate public hearings to the community. We did a little bit of a better job this time, but in my opinion, it's not sufficient enough. I'm glad to see we have many people from the district here, administration, some students, and community members. How about sending out a school messenger or an email that there's going to be a public hearing? How about, why are we posting to Facebook that there's a meeting tonight at 12:30 this afternoon? We couldn't do that last week. We knew we were going to have this meeting. I'm just a little concerned that we're truly communicating with the public on matters of importance with the district. Okay? We're sending out Facebook and emails that tests are being canceled on Saturday. We could have simultaneously done the same thing pertaining to this meeting. We have, as the superintendent clearly stated, 72 hours to notify the public. So on Thursday, why couldn't an email go out in school messenger? Why couldn't an automated call go out? We're doing automated calls for surveys. If we're going to have public hearings, we have to try to communicate that we're having a public hearing to as many members of the community as possible. You can't take for granted that people are going to check the the webpage. Okay, there was a storm coming. Turned out we didn't have a storm, luckily. Okay? But people aren't focused at checking the webpage on a Thursday. We need to have better communication to the public when it comes to public hearings when we're going to discuss them. As I said, I'm glad we have a much larger crowd here. Okay? But we anticipate that everyone owns a computer and everyone has access to a website. They don't. We have to take those things into consideration. So, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Seeing no one, could we have a motion to close the public hearing and resume the regular voting meeting? Mrs. Pelton moved, and Mr. Soma seconded. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. All right. At this time, we'll have public comments on agenda items. Again, there's 30 minutes to speak just to items on the agenda. If you have some other concern, please save it for the comment period at the end of the meeting. The maximum time allowed for any one speaker is 3 minutes. Again, please state your name and the specific topic about which you wish to speak. As speakers must limit comments to issues appropriate for public discussion, compliments or complaints about student discipline, specific student issues, or personnel must not be addressed during public comment. After the meeting, you may come up and speak with any member of the administration or school board if you have a personal concern. Also, if you prefer to submit a comment to be posted with the answer, a question on the website, please submit it to the district clerk, Mrs. Pedro, and we'll get back to you, and it will be published for everybody to see. Thank you. All right, any public comments on agenda items?
Ed Sloshow again, Carnegie Fishkill. Agenda item 5.02. I realize the district school buildings are in need of major repair work. I see an estimate of roughly $28 million of new borrowing, but I do not see anything in the presentation on how the taxpayers are going to repay this new potential fund. I ask this question because we have still not received any information from the board on how taxpayers will be paying for the previous fund once we have finished the capital projects from our last approved referendum from 2013. Where is the money coming from to pay the debt service? Do you plan on putting the purchase of district offices back up for a vote to eliminate all district rentals in May? You also estimated repairs to Vassar in the presentation. Again, is there a plan to close Vassar and move district offices there for the September 2017 year? As I stated in a prior meeting, we cannot afford to carry the rental increases and pay the debt services on the bond. So if we do not buy the building, does Vassar close? These are items we need to discuss as a community. Agenda items 7.09, 7.10, and 7.11, new course offerings. These new courses seem interesting, but where is the input from parents and community? There are no parents or community members as part of this new course proposal committee. If these new offerings are part of the district's strategic objectives, then again I say, where are the parents? No presentation to the board or community or parents. It's just listed as an agenda item that will be approved during the notorious consent agenda. I have a concern about this being offered to both 11th and 12th grade students. Are these electives or not electives? You cannot substitute these classes for Regents classes. In my opinion, they should be for 12th grade electives only. An 11th grade student has many classes and many obligations and many things that have to be completed. As the board reviewed these courses, I would like to think you would like to hear more about them before voting. As I said, I think they're very interesting, and and I think parents would like to hear more about it and be included in the process. Agenda item 803, change in start times. I do not see where the school days will end. I believe that language should also be part of the resolution as well as the start date, September 2016, for example. Also, what are the time changes for before and after school activities? As an example, Environmental Club at Fishkill Plains starts at 7:50 a.m. on Wednesdays. Will that club now start at 7:30 a.m.? You are voting to change the start times, but you have not voted on changing to a two-tier bus schedule as of yet. How do you vote to change the start times before voting on which two-tier bus system you want to go with? Is it scenario 4? Is it scenario 6? I'm a little confused. Could the board please explain this to the community? Agenda item 901 and 903. I would like to thank the board president and the superintendent. I have brought up the gap elimination issue for 2 years in front of this board, and you have finally made a decision to contact Albany and fight for money that we so desperately need for our district. I have provided this board with an outline of a charter for the Legislative Action Committee. 10 seconds. I hope that you will vote to move ahead with this formation of this committee so that it may assist in the battle that lies ahead with Albany and be used as part of a follow-up to this resolution, as well as battle against the unfunded mandates that continue to cripple this district and our taxpayers. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Metzger. The father of a student at St. Columba Private School. I have a couple of, I'm also county legislator for, the reason why I mention that is I've gotten a lot of calls today from concerned parents about the scheduling changes to the school starts. Most specifically, the effect that it's going to have on the busing. There's a lot of concerns that has not been squared away, and we haven't come to some sort of acceptable conclusion with that. We're hearing all sorts of things, like the possibility of having students that are very young, possibly elementary school students, on the buses with high school students. Am I allowed to ask questions? Because that's one I'd like to have specifically answered. Is that going to happen?
You may submit questions to Mrs. Pedro in writing, and the answers will be posted on the district website, so that everybody in the community can see both your question and the answer. The reason we do this is because we want to make sure that an accurate answer is given, so that we can check with the district for staff and personnel and find out exactly what the right answer is, so we're not misleading anybody, and so everybody in the community finds the answer. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, I'll just move along without the answer. I have a real problem. Having students that are 5, 6 years old on the bus with students that are possibly 17, 18 years old, I mean, that just cannot be a good mix. I don't see how that would be acceptable to anyone in the profession of teaching children. I know the response when I've asked that question before has been, well, there are certain cases where there's students from high school on buses with students from younger grades in the private schools themselves. Yes, that's true. That does happen in other districts. However, when you look at the ratio of how many students are on that bus, there's usually a lot less. I'm concerned about possibly having 30 high school students or junior high students with 4 or 5 younger kids. Of course, there's a bus driver on each bus to kind of keep an eye on all of the students, which is wonderful, but I just feel that if he's watching the students, who's watching the room, or vice versa. I just feel that we're sort of setting ourselves up for having a real issue with this happening. One of the other things that I've heard is the students would get on a bus and would go to a central location, change buses, and then go to their private school. I know that has happened in the past, and it continues to happen. And I feel it's acceptable if you choose to send your students to a school that's 45 minutes away or something like that. My kids go to a school that's closer to my house than the public school is. So I don't know why my child would have to change buses just to get 2 miles down the road, when people that go to public school would not have to do that. We all pay taxes, and the only thing we ask for our taxes are ride to school. I think there's a nominal price that each private student gets from the state taxes, county taxes, and maybe the nurse in the school, and a couple other small programs. It's very minor what we ask for, but a safe ride to school is one of those things that we're asking for, and we don't feel that it's appropriate just to save some money to put our kids at risk. If you asked everybody in the public to do the same that we're asking us, it would be out there. But unfortunately, we're just a small group within the group.
Excuse me, Mr. Metzger, but you're way over your time.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off, but other people may wish to speak. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maureen Cassidy. I'm speaking this evening in regards to the school start time. I think once again we have a situation where we have a very poorly written resolution. That resolution is missing a lot of key components. It implies that all elementary schools already begin at the same time, which they do not. So reading that resolution almost does not include Myers in that. It does not have the end time for schools, and that plan is contingent on a two-tier system. And if you have not decided what your two-tier system is going to be yet, it is not wise to make a decision that is contingent upon that. So I think it would be wise for someone to make a motion to table this, to do a little more community research, something a little better than that disjointed survey that came out, and have more appropriate questions during that survey, such as the start time of school, the end time of school, the actual plan that you plan to put into place, instead of, again, another blank check, another blank, here you go, do what you want to do, and forget about the community members. Some of the reasons for changing the start time were for safety for those students in the morning. On those dark winter mornings, 20 minutes does not make a difference. And if that 20 minutes means that my child is on the bus an extra 20 minutes because now everything's rerouted, it doesn't do anybody any good because now my kid's out there another 20 minutes earlier waiting for a bus. I think there's a lot of questions that you have not answered. Whether we actually really physically have the buses to do this and accomplish this. If we are basing those bus loads on what the bus says it holds, I suggest that this board here get on a full bus with the big backpack that a high school student would have and see where you're going to sit and see how you would feel if you were one of the last 5 students to enter that bus and they were based on 2 to 3 in a seat, if that is really a viable option to have the buses that loaded. Will that create discipline problems on the bus? Will it create longer bus routes? If they are dependent on Wappingers and Ketchum students being on the same bus, it's 1.2 miles from one school to the other, but if you've ever tried to drive from Ketchum to Wap Junior, it takes probably 25 minutes to get across Route 9, to stop at that light at Bernie de Vere, to get up and around to this school. You add the morning traffic that's already at Ketchum, and you now have buses that are late for school, kids that are late for instruction. So I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions that need to be answered before you move forward with this plan. So I urge this board to act with reason and pull that resolution from the table tonight.
Good evening. My name is Judy D'Alessandro. I am the Vice President for the PSA for St. Columbus School. I am also on the Board of Directors for Dutchess Tourism. I am an officer for Dutchess Tourism. I care about Dutchess County. I care about who comes into Dutchess County, who lives in Dutchess County, and who spends their money and time in Dutchess County. So I'm just here to provide you with a few facts. I asked our school principal today, Sister Kathleen, what exactly does the district provide our school with? She says the total is about $90.58 per student per year. $58 for textbooks, $14.98 for software, $11.35 for hardware, and $6.25 for library. This, of course, is in addition to a school nurse that's full-time, part-time, OT, PT, and speech therapy. All we ask for is a ride to school, and we want to change this so drastically in some of your scenarios. It's frightening to me that Catholic schools won't survive in Dutchess County. The $90.58 versus $16,000 you spend per student per year in public school. We pay the same amount in school taxes as everyone else does and receive the least. I spend $7,300 in school taxes alone. I know it's not my property tax, this is school taxes alone in Hopewell Junction. And you get the biggest bang for our buck, and you want to give us the least in return. You would have to agree that all the students that are enrolled in parochial schools lessen the burden on the school district. You must agree with that. What would happen if all the Catholic school children suddenly became enrolled in public schools? Would you need more teachers, more assistants, maybe bigger schools? What would be your answer? I feel some of these scenarios, especially scenario number 6, you presented, leads me to believe it's discriminating against Catholics and Catholic schools. So we want you to keep the transportation for Catholic schools in Dutchess County as it is. Thank you for your time.
you, before you make any decision, to look at the actual numbers of the hubbing. It affects a very small percentage of the number of parochial and private school children that are hubbed. The majority, I think almost all the children in St. Denis and Columba, St. Martin, I believe St. Mary's, those children are not hubbed. It affects the children in Poughkeepsie Day School, St. Aloysius, and I believe it's Christian Faith Academy. It's a very small number, so I believe some of the information you're getting is somewhat misleading. Many months ago, I heard a board member ask, do you have to bus private school, parochial school children? I went online and I looked it up, and there is laws governing this, so I hope that you are all aware of this. And what it states is that these children are entitled to equal and fair busing. And I feel a lot of the solutions or a lot of the options that were given were not fair. And it's extending our children's time on the bus. My question is why? Why is it our children, why are they not entitled to the same type of busing as public school children? I don't understand why we're dividing this. Why are we making these children different? I thought that was something we look very against in today's society. And it's very disheartening to see this. And it's very hard to explain to my children why this would happen to them. And if this does happen, I would like you to come and explain this to the children, why they're being penalized for the choices we've made. One of the reasons I know it's not fair is on, let's say, for instance, half days. Our children are bused before the grammar school, public school children. Right? High school children are picked up, then middle school parochial children, and then grammar school children. But when it comes time to pick up the children on a half day, high schools are picked up, middle schools are picked up, then the grammar school, public school children are picked up, and then we're picked up. My children sit in their school for 45 minutes on half days waiting for their bus to come pick them up. Why is that? No one has an answer for me. The survey that was presented to you to help make your decision, it's invalid. Ask any parent of these schools, of private parochial schools. We did not receive the same surveys. The questions were very misleading, so I don't understand how those results could be presented to you to help you make your decision. I thank you for your time, and again, I ask when you make this decision to ask yourself why. Again, why are our children not receiving the same equal and fair treatment? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Deirdre Primrose. I'm head of the Parent Association at St. Mary's School in Fishkill, and I came to comment on in 2003 approval of the change in start time. I wanted to say concern that parents in my school are getting similar to what we've heard previously, that they were worried that the busing and less time spent on the bus, as well as who their children are on the bus with, is going to change. They want to go to one basic thing of trust. In the past, there's been some issues with hubbing, specifically back in 2010. We had, and I don't know how many members are still on the board that lived through that meeting, when the parents came in from the parochial schools that were very upset that hadn't been communicated to them that their kids were going to be hubbed to different schools, and then brought kindergartners to another Catholic school, get on another bus, and come back to their school. With major travel. And it really upset the parents, and we had a big meeting, and then it didn't happen. That disintegrated the trust that the public, and specifically people in Catholic school, had with the school. Now, once again, about a week or two ago, I got a survey on a telephone call asking me three questions that we know that it wasn't going to affect the start time of our kids in only public schools. It was misleading because it didn't say that your buses might change, or your route may change, or who the kids are on the bus with may change. I don't really understand what the purpose of that was, other than to just get people confused. So your communication has to get better with that, for us to work with you, as well as you have to build up trust in it. We've looked at all the scenarios. It shocks me, quite frankly, that scenario 6 has hubbing back on as a possibility. So I'm not sure if you've looked into the history of that. previously talked about, to take this off the table and motion to have, you can't talk about start times without talking about the bus. They have to go hand in hand, and you gotta get input from everyone before you make that decision. I think it will help to build the trust again and to make the constituents, so like you said, we pay the same taxes. We want reasonable solutions. We're not looking for anything unreasonable. I've had to deal with a few busing issues this year, just with, kids being, my daughter goes to Catholic high school up in North, and, she's on the bus for over an hour. At the beginning of the school year, there were 62 kids on a bus. And when I pulled the kids standing, high school kids standing in the bus with elementary school kids, with backpacks, football players, I was told 66 kids can fit on that bus. And 3 can fit in a seat. 3 high school kids can sit in a seat. They cannot. I'm not sure how your insurance carrier feels about that, but it's not acceptable. So, I don't know what your scenarios for this change are, but that's got to be looked into too, the safety of the children, and that's a viable option. Thank you.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we really don't allow applauding or booing because that, kind of removes the polite attention we should all be giving to everyone, whether we agree with them or not. So would you please refrain from applauding, even if you do agree with the person? Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jennifer Kozak. I'm a Wappinger Central School District taxpayer. My kids are enrolled in St. Mary's in Fishkill, but I'm speaking here not only a private school parent, but on the behalf of the taxpayer. Our money goes, doesn't matter where we choose to put our kids, we all make choices that are best for our families. We put our kids where we think that's best, and we pay our taxes. That's our civic duty. We all do it, so we should all be treated the same. One of the things I want to talk about with this climate change is not just the effect it will have on us as private school parents and the busing, but also what it does to parents who work, parents that work in a family. So it's not just private school parents that have a lot of working parents in both families, it's also public schools. Has anyone considered the effect it has on parents that need to be at work at 8 o'clock? Do they now have to get early daycare as well as after school daycare for their children to save 13 minutes of start time, I think, for high school kids? So I just think the board should consider the effect it has on all working families, regardless of whether children go to school. Also, I was just going to make a comment, just so for the record, that survey, I hope did not cost my tax dollars. That was horrific. It did nothing but confuse everybody, like Deidre said. So anyway, I just hope that this is thought out more, and just don't kid yourselves. The start times and the bus ride duration for public school kids is long too, and it reaches that 45. I believe it's a 45-minute regulated max. My mother-in-law has been a daycare provider for 35 years. She has 13,000 buses coming to and from her house, and she can guarantee you public school children are on those buses longer than that max time. It's not just private school kids. So please don't be fooled that if you're a public school parent, that this will not affect your children's time on that bus, because it will. We already have those issues with today's current system. So I'm just, ask you to reconsider and take this off the table. Thank you.
It is very emotional for me to think of putting a little 5-year-old daughter on a bus with a high school sophomore, freshman, whomever. It's scary. I was there. It's very intimidating. And I'm sure if we all reach back in our memories, we can think of times when we felt uncomfortable, we felt bullied, we felt pressured, we were exposed to things we should not have been exposed to. Don't do that to my child. Don't take his or her innocence. It's not appropriate. Let them be an elementary school kid. Let them build peer relationships with their own peers on our own buses. That's all I'm asking for as a parent. Don't help my child. I am a working parent. Both of us work. It is a delicate ecosystem we have going on here with drop off and pick up and timing of everything like that. There's
too many loose ends in this proposal to be voted on this evening. You don't have a bus plan in place to support a change in start time. It is so scary to families that you would impose this change on us and the unknown, the impact on our kids, on our families. It is terrifying. I'm literally shaking and disturbed about it. Because I don't know how I will explain that to my child. I don't know what I will do if I have to watch my little daughter get on the bus and I see a 16-year-old boy on that bus. What is she going to see on his mobile smartphone? What is she going to read? What are they going to talk about? The sex ed class that he had in school that day? The drug discussion that he had exposure to that my daughter knows nothing about? That is not fair. Don't take my child's innocence, please. I'm asking you to tailor this for another discussion. There's too much to talk about to make this decision tonight. Thank you.
Please, no applause or, thank you. If you'd like to get up and make a comment, you're welcome to. Yes, Mrs. Pedro. Thank you. We only have time for one more comment because there's a 30-minute limit on public comment before. But if you have things you'd like to talk about at the end of the meeting, there's also public comment time. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is Paul Bocelli. I live in Fishkill. My children were redistricted from Brinkerhoff to Myers Corners. In regards to the start time, if you don't have an end time, I don't see how you can discuss this or vote on it at this time. I would again request that other people did table it. I'm also a parishioner of St. Columba Church, and I do think that their students should be entitled to the same busing and transportation as our students have. You also need to think about something. There are still repercussions going on from the redistricting. Being that I'm a Fishkill resident, there were opportunities afforded to my children that we had to pay for at Brinkerhoff Elementary School that were more flexible, cheaper, and more variety than there is at Myers Corners. You're moving times around, and I don't think you're really fully thinking about what's going to happen in the future. In addition, Myers Corners already starts earlier. One of the reasons that you're supposed to be changing the start times for the younger children is that it's supposed to help them. Myers is actually going to be later now. So you need to look at the amount of kids that are in Myers Corners and how they're going to get affected by it. That's all.
Thank you. All right, the next thing is communications and announcements received by the Board of Education. I think we started over here last time, so I'll start here this time. Mrs. Laval?
I have several items I'd like to mention. The first would be just the volume of tonight's agenda is very concerning to me. We really pushed the limit on the 30-minute public comments. We put so much on this agenda that's not really fair to the public or to the board ourselves to have to consider so many things and discuss so many things in the amount of time that we have allotted. These decisions have significant long-term impact, and I think we need to be careful about taking the time that we need to research these concerns. I agree with Mr. Sloshar, who mentioned public input, and can we better reach out to the public to get their input, to hear their concerns, and if we jam-pack the agendas, then even if we reach out to the public, we're not leaving time for them to bring their concerns to us. I would like to, we have the public comments, regarding the Smart School Bonds Act. I have a general concern, and I know we have an opportunity to talk about it later, but I'd like to make this comment now. For the board to consider, for the public to be alerted to, Dictionary.com has somehow been validated by the Common Core content as a resource. It's something that I'm very concerned in general with the technology and the access that our children are going to have to in school, that parents are not going to know what their children are accessing. And there was some discussion this week on social media about links that are found in dictionary.com. The word drastic, if you look it up, on this validated site, is the definition is acting with force or violence, semicolon, violent. There's several other definitions, refers to as an adjective. A little further down the page, dictionary.com gives contemporary examples of the use of the word. Their example is, of course, the ramifications were drastic. The premarital sex killed poor Pamela and haunted Lady Mary for nearly 2 seasons. The very next line down, there's a link to the Daily Beast with the phrase, dirtiest sex scenes video.
There are children in our audience.
That's my point. That's my
Excuse me, yes, but Mrs. Laval, I don't think some of these things should really be said in front of our children. So perhaps we could talk about it later.
I won't read any more of those words, but
yeah.
this is my very point.
Yeah, but
Our children are being exposed. They're being sent to these sites. We're talking about equipping them in school with sites that we're calling appropriate for them, and this is what's found on these sites.
Okay,
So,
excuse me, but I think perhaps we'd best talk to, refer this to Mr. Lokema, because the best of my knowledge, we have, the sort of devices on all our school computers that prevent these things from showing up just the same as you can do for your home computer. And so, Mr. Lokema, could you address this, please? All right, not now, that's board comment, but perhaps you could discuss it with Mr. Lokema afterwards, because I don't think we should really be using these words in public, especially in front of children. Even if it's a problem, maybe you could talk with him later. Could you talk about something else?
I can. Well, I'll refrain from reading the language anymore, but I want to alert the public that that is the level of exposure that our children are subject to on curriculum and internet sites that are validated in the curriculum that we have for our schools. So I didn't mean to offend anybody, but it's that real and it's that present, and if that's what's going to be in our policy and we don't want to discuss, then we need to acknowledge that it's in there, and we need to be more careful about putting it into our schools and in front of our children.
Mr. Selma? Dr. Risby?
Good evening, everyone. I attended the John Jay High School PTSA meeting, and they discussed the prom show and rehearsal. The students were very excited about this the event, and Mrs. King was also there as always. John Jay High School graduate Mr. Jim Fowler is a new president and publisher of the Poughkeepsie Journal, and proud of him, and this is an honor for Wappinger School District. So congratulations to Mr. Fowler. The other thing is that CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, recently reported that 75% of new heroin users are initially addicted to prescription opioid before turning to heroin. New York State Health official has recently announced that CVS Pharmacy is going to start selling Narcan, which is naloxone, without prescription. So I thought it's something interesting to know, as we are now going to have a policy on Narcan. Thank you.
Mr. Lumia?
Just a very brief statement. I want to acknowledge the RCK FBLA Club for the volunteer work they did serving the participant in ARC in Poughkeepsie, New York. I'd also like to thank 3 former RCK business teachers who were also there, Mr. Emerson Miller, who was quite dedicated to the program, Mrs. Mary Alice Goodall, and Mr. Carl Pachadi. They did a fantastic service. I'd like to thank those students as well as those teachers for their service to the community in the art program. That's all I'd like to say.
Mrs. Pelton. Mrs. Karat. Mr. Rubin.
Yes, ma'am. So I have to borrow this. Thank you. I had the opportunity and the privilege to attend the Martin Luther King ceremony at the Castle Point VA. I also attended the blood drive at the Wappingers Junior High School. Kudos to those children for again hosting that drive. That's a great benefit to the community. It was fun for me to attend the Evans Elementary School winter concert. I had some opportunity to meet with central office staff. I also had the privilege of attending, there was a forum for the parents of at Van Wyck Junior High School of the SAT versus taking the ACT prep forum. And it was a very well planned out event. I believe it's going to be, if it's not already on the district website, it will be there shortly is my understanding. And kudos to Mr. Jeff Beneke, I believe, for organizing that. I found it very informative. I had the privilege of being at the walkway over the Hudson when the final flag that will be donated to our district was taken down and handed over to us. That was a wonderful, in my opinion, event. I attended both the Evans and Wappingers Junior High Schools as just an after-school visit. I was also, as a representative, I attended the BOCES school board meeting, and what I'm very sorry about, that occurred on the same night as a Kinry winter concert, something I always enjoy going to, but I was not able to attend that. Can't be in two places at once. Thank you.
I had the opportunity to attend the AAUW, American Association of University Women program on the Common Core, and I was very pleased to see that on their panel, as a representative of the local district, they invited a member from the Wappingers staff, and there was interesting discussion afterwards from the audience on various points on this whole issue. I also was able to attend with Mr. Rubin, which he organized the presentation of a flag on the walkway. It sure was. A week ago Sunday, we were out there, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars we had a lovely flag.
And American Legion.
And American Legion, both, yes. We had a lovely flag ceremony and presented a flag to John Jay High School. They had previously presented one to R.C. Ketchum. So we're proud to be flying those. On Friday, I attended the CTON conference at the United Nations. It was basically for educators on the Sustainable Development Goals, which have just been approved by 193 nations unanimously. These are not requirements, they are not policies, they are merely a sentiment that all the countries would like to do such things as provide clean water to everyone, eliminate hunger, et cetera, et cetera. But they had many wonderful ideas for lesson plans and projects that different educators have come up with around the country and around the world that they shared with us. On the last board meeting, we had a very packed agenda, and so we tried to move along, and I did get an opportunity to congratulate Mr. Lokema and the Wappingers staff on the wonderful job they're doing on implementing the strategic plan. Despite a great deal of change in central administration, all the people, both continuing and new, hopped right on this and came up with so far 4 wonderful things. One is our new website, and I hope everybody's checked it out. Mrs. Watkins and Mr. Lokema have worked very hard on it. Another is the Ed Camp, which was professional development last year. Is going to be again this year, in which we are utilizing the many people in our district who have
who have expertise and things to share with other people in the district, and they're presenting those things which our faculty and staff want to see done and would like to learn more about. This is a savings to the district since we don't have to hire outside consultants, and it's utilizing the people we have. The third thing that they've done is they've integrated, the technology teachers have been doing a fantastic job integrating the teaching of technology skills in elementary school with social studies units at different grade levels. And this is a wonderful way of accomplishing two educational goals at the same time within the limited time that we have. And the fourth thing, which which is on the agenda for tonight, is streamlined procedure for developing new course offerings, new electives. And so 3 of them are on the consent agenda for tonight. So I thank you very much for this great job that our administration and technology department and all teachers and other staff have done. Thank you. Superintendent's report.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Education, community. The first thing that I'd like to share is that tomorrow we start with our Regents examinations at the secondary level, and some formal midterms will be taking place from Tuesday to Friday. Just want to take this opportunity to just wish all of our students luck, as well as I'm sure they've been studying hard for some of these exams. Many of our students have been resilient, trying to meet the standards, the New York State standards, to make sure that they pass their required Regents. So we do have some students going in for a second or third time, and just wanted to share with the secondary staff and the administrators that I see here, and some of our teachers, thank you for all your efforts, and good luck to all of our students who will be testing this week so that they can be successful. Second, I'd like to recognize our Board of Education president on behalf of the New York State School Boards Association. So the board, this is an award, it's an achievement award. The Board Achievement Award to Margaret Kellen, Wappinger School Board, for participation in New York State School Boards Association Leadership Development Training, totaling 75 points. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And oops, I apologize. I haven't been written up since high school. So. Next is, I'd just like to take this opportunity, along with Dr. Cardwell and the department, but specifically Mr. Mensch, who leads many of our science-related activities. On February 28th at John Jay Senior High School, we will be having our very first STEM night. This is part of the STEAM Advisory Council, and it's for all students in kindergarten to 2nd grade. And I always look forward to our events that are aligned to our STEM, as well as science and math. So January 28th, on a Thursday, we've been advertising for it, and I'm sure it's January. January 28th, so I wanted to share that as well. Lastly, on a more formal level, we received a workshop presentation from our director, Mr. Bross, and Rhinebeck Architect, where we really talked about the 5-building year condition survey, and we provided you with an extensive presentation that outlined our 5-year building condition survey, which we are required to do every 5 years. Today, what I'd like to present to the Board of Education and Community is how we took that 5-year building condition survey to really outline all of the needs that we have in our school district. Instead of talking about it from the perspective of a capital improvement project, just to understand the needs that we have in our school district and how we are thinking in terms of moving forward in the very near future to address these needs. Our first priority, and I think you will see it, is that what came out in the 5-year building condition survey is that more or less, not more or less, we've been pretty much out of compliance with ADA since 1991. where we haven't really done much to make our facilities useful under the American Disabilities Act. We saw that in the 5-year building condition survey. Some of the information you'll hear today will be slightly repetitive, but wanted to show you how we are thinking strategically to move forward and undertake what's written in the 5-year building condition survey, as well as some of the other projects that we would like to present to the Board of Education. Mr. Ross, Mr. Zemke.
Can everyone hear me? This is a presentation that summarizes what the district has been working on for the past few months in terms of district-wide improvement goals. These are goals we're going to talk about the building conditions survey, its findings. We're going to talk about other things. The agenda basically is we're talking about the improvement goals, what those facility improvements might be, project budgets, and then project schedules, and then next steps if you were to pursue developing these goals. District facility improvement goals, the primary mission of the district is, of course, to educate the children and keep them safe while we're doing that. Your first asset is the people in your district, the students, the administration, the parents, the teachers. Your second most significant asset is your built environment, your built asset, the buildings and grounds. And it's critical that you keep them safe, that you monitor, maintain, and improve them, and keep them in service. The recent building conditions survey and the district's ongoing maintenance and improvement plan, and also input from district staff and the public, have identified facility improvements that require solutions. And this presentation will show you what some of those are. I've broken it down to simplify it and make it understandable. 6 goals. The first goal is to address immediate projects, things that were identified in the building conditions survey or by the district in terms of these things have to be done now. One of them is also a state mandate, which I will describe in the next slide. The second goal would be address the buildings that were rated unsatisfactory. Superintendent Carrione pointed out a lot of them have to do with accessibility for the handicapped. Most of your buildings are in good shape in terms of life safety, except for access for the handicapped and a few other issues that we'll also talk about in a second. The third improvement goal would be to go through the building conditions survey and parse out the improvements and prioritize them and determine which ones you would like to do and then to do them. A fourth goal would be the Smart School Bond Act funding that provides you funding for technology and security. We've already started that process. There are a couple other things that are under consideration. Fifth, improve sports facilities. The athletic directors and sports people have their own list of things that they would like to see happen. We've also included those in these goals. And the same with fine arts and performing arts. Goal number 1, immediate projects. The building conditions survey identified a couple things, the roof at Evans, the floor tiles in this building, the press box, and John J. dugouts were also concerns prior to the building conditions survey. Those are 5 projects that are underway in terms of the district can no longer wait to get them done. So right now the press box and concession stand has been designed. It's up at the State Education Department awaiting approval. The John J. baseball dugouts approved by the SED just last week. They're now out to bid. Bids are due February 11th. The floor tiles in the Rockland Roots Auditorium, that's under design. It's basically taking up all these tiles and replacing it with new flooring. The failing roof at James Evans School. We cannot wait for a capital project vote to get this roof done. It's under design right now. And then the state has mandated that wherever there is an open flame in a building, either in a boiler room or in a place where there's heater, They have to be done by June 27th. So that project is also going to be done. So these are 5 immediate projects that the district is taking care of at this point. Goal number 2, buildings that have been rated unsatisfactory. To improve those ratings to satisfactory. And to do that, this is a list of things that we need to do. Most of it deals with access for the handicapped. There's a few buildings that need access to the second floor, so we need to install elevators. Some of them is just improving the toilet routes so that they're accessible. 2 buildings have other issues. One, this building has a ventilation system that's in serious need of repair. And then the James Evans roof, which I've talked about as being under design right now. Goal number 3 is to review the building condition survey and act on the recommended improvement. This is a list, there are 2 slides here, this is a list of the items that at each school that have been prioritized by the district. There was a series of meetings, there was a series of discussions. What you see in black type are what we're calling priority 1 items. Those are things that the district feels should be done first. What's in blue is what's considered priority 2 items. Those should be done, but perhaps they have to wait. If you recall, in my last presentation, we identified over the project cost for all of the building condition survey items was about $87 million. This is just a portion. This is what the district feels has the highest priority. This is the rest of the list of the schools. Most of the work is done at the schools. The bus garage at Wappingers Junior High School and the facilities and operations will also have accessibility issues, which is why they're on here. Goal number 4, improve technology and security. There's been considerable discussion here about that. 2 items that you're looking at now, the box and the instructional technology are things that are underway. 2 other things that are being considered are air conditioning improvements to the servers, because the technology has been increased, we need to make sure that those rooms stay cool. And then also considering the construction of vestibules at school entrances, providing a safer way to have visitors come and go to the village without jeopardizing interior security. Goal number 5, these are sports facilities improvements. They include at Ketchum High School improving pretty much all of the fields, putting artificial turf and lighting at the feature field, pathways and portable features, improve the soccer and baseball fields, resod the practice football field, renovate the weight rooms and add some storage for equipment. At John Jay High School, feature field improvements, artificial turf, upgrade the lighting, new scoreboard, improve the other fields, sod, soccer, baseball, regrade the baseball field, new fencing, and renovate the toilet rooms that are unusable right now. There's a field house there, Morton Fields, improving that and then adding storage space to it. Goal number 6, art and drama improvements. These are items requested by the arts and drama department. At Ketchum High School, improving the auditorium, seats, the lighting, finishes, getting the acoustical shelf stage, improving the performance facility, band room improvements, sound and video recording system, video monitors for the green rooms. When there's a production going on, it's good for the people waiting to go on to have a view of what's going on stage, so they know when the cues are coming up. That's about renovating the surrounding classroom, replacing the government. At John Jay High School, again, renovating the auditorium for performances, seats, lights, finishes, and acoustic shelf for the stage. The acoustic shelf for the stage works well for small chorus groups that want to project the sound out beyond the curtains. It will improve the performances there. Music practice room improvements, and then renovating the 3D art classrooms, and again, replacing the art with the singing. Anyone that's done art knows the amount of things that go into Stanford knows their application. So those are the 6 goals. All of them come into play. One of the things that the district wanted me to explain to you is how they are trying to budget these things and make sure that appropriate funds are used in the most appropriate way. So for the press box concession and the dugouts, those are being funded with savings from the 2013 capital project. That project is just about complete, remains under budget. There are savings that can fund those two projects. The auditorium floor and the average roof would come out of the general fund balance, and the CO detectors would also do that as well. The other improvements, the building condition survey improvements, sports improvements, art improvements, would all require new borrowing. The security and technology portion of it is fully funded by the state. It's a grant. You have to do the work, apply for the money, and make the use. There's also a series of district reform improvements. In the building condition survey, we noted a number of things that do not require capital projects, or the things that the maintenance group can do with their own forces. One of them includes the obtaining of a machine that will make signs that are suitable for the ADA. So you have a room sign with a rail underneath it. So that's going to be self-perform, which explains some of the dollars there. That would also come out of the general fund. The total of all the improvements is $31,172,000. This is a summary of, and also just backing up a bit, your state aid ratio is 55%, so you can see where each of these projects is aided. We do not have figures from your fiscal project to say what the impact is to the individual taxpayer. That's a matter of being developed. Funding sources, this is a recap. So savings from the 2013 capital project, there's an amount of $515,000. The reserve fund, fund balance, the reserve fund, is that what it is? Okay, the reserve fund, that should say fund balance. And then the general fund for the district support portions, the state smart school bond act, 100%, and then those are the total funds available, almost $4.5 million. So out of the total need, if you were to decide to go with the priority 1 and 2, you would have to borrow on the amount of $26,723,000, with 55% still aid. If you only decided to do the priority 1 improvements or some other mixture of things, the borrowing would decrease to almost $19 million. That's, these are all just total numbers. With every project, there's a schedule. The biggest hurdle in any school capital project right now is the amount of time it takes the state education department to review and approve the plan. This shows where we started the summer with the building condition survey. You can see that in green in 2015. That red vertical line represents where we are now. There's a schedule where you, at some point, will need to determine what you intend to do and how you intend to do it. There's a secret process that's involved. Then there's public information. If you decide to seek voter approval this May, there's a referendum. And then after that is the schedule for design and construction. We would fast track it as we did in the 2015 capital project. We would pull out the projects that we believe the state education department would review quickly, try to get work done the following summer. And then there are other projects where right now the state education department requires 8 months to review a project that includes mechanical and electrical items. So that big long red bar is the project sitting there waiting for someone to look at it. There's a bidding process and then construction. Construction will take place mostly in the summer. There may be some work that can be done during the school year depending on what the project consists of and also make sure that it doesn't impact the educational portion of the district. That might include things like your sports facilities where the field might be used. There might be work done while the school is going on, but it wouldn't impact the field. So next steps, if you were to pursue this secret process, because you're considering artificial turf and lighting that is considered an unlisted action, so you need to go through an environmental assessment form, lead agency letters, and maturity date waiting period. The rest of the items are considered type 2 and process, you would have to get that process in line so that you can establish yourself as a lead agency and also make a declaration about the environmental impact by March 28th. Prior to that, you would need to review and approve project scopes and budgets. And then, because of your May 17th vote, you have to have your resolution advertised 45 days before that. That date is April 1, so you get a board meeting on date. You would need to get all of these things in line to have that done no later than the 28th if you were to have any sort of vote on May 17th. And that's the end of my presentation.
Mrs. Corral.
Your goal number 3, recommended building and site improvements, you are prioritizing, am I correct, that you're prioritizing for priority 1, Royce Ketchum sports improvements and art program improvements as top priority for Royce Ketchum, or am I misunderstanding that goal?
That's probably that could be a source of confusion. But those are listed in the priority 1 totals. So yes, I would say they're priority 1.
So how does goal number 3, when it references sports improvements and art program improvements, refer to goal number 6? And 5, where you're delineating.
Goal number 3 does is include all of the improvements at all of the schools. It doesn't just include the building conditions survey items. It includes the sports improvements, the arts improvements. It also includes, I think, some of the smartphone. No, it does not. But it includes all of the items that were considered a priority 1 by the people in the building conditions survey items. If you recall from the building conditions survey, those 2 items were included as program improvements. So they were given a priority.
Mr. Lumian.
So the board better understands, if you look at the printouts that were given by Rhinebeck Architects, I was fortunate enough to, I think let me tell you exactly what priority 1 items are and priority 2. If you look at RCK, see what as I said, starting 102, you see that? No, you have to look at this here. The packet that we were given with all the actual, what has to be done. I don't know if
This was prepared by the district from our.
I know that, but I think to get to this distribution, what I did last night, I actually looked at priority 1, priority 2, and what I did, this includes everything. In the first packet, we included just priority 1 items.
Correct.
Now, if you look at this packet here, and then look at packet 2, you can actually differentiate between priority 1 and priority 2 items, which I think is very important to do.
Right, and also this list does it by color.
I understand that. I understand, but for the benefit of the board, I'm more than happy to share with you afterwards which are priority 1 and priority 2 items, which is, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Lemia, included in your board packet this week, you were given
I know.
a list that
I did,
detailed
absolutely.
out priority
What I
two.
did last night, I actually took the list and differentiated between priority 1 and priority 2.
Right, no, it does that.
It does. I mean, you've got to take your time and do it.
John.
It's provided, it's in the packet.
The list.
Well, I did it myself last night, even look at the packet. I'm sorry for saying that, but I did it myself. Thank you. Just a quick clarification. First of all, you guys did a great job. We talked about this in the Capital Improvement Committee, and I think I'd like to thank the superintendent as well as yourself, Mr. Gross. Oh, got 2 minutes. I want to say, my God, I'm limited to 2 minutes also. I didn't realize that. Anyway, just a quick question. So far as turfs, I'm in favor of turfs. The only problem I have is we have the kids where they play soccer. There are 3 sports they play on the soccer field. There's soccer, obviously, JV and varsity. There's, what else? There's the field hockey, I believe it is, as well as another sport. Why is it that we don't surface that with turf versus the versus a football field. It seems to me 3 sports versus 1 sport is more appropriate, it seems to me.
You can actually use your football field.
I know, I looked at it today, I actually looked at the dimension of the football field. We do have enough space, I think, to do a football field.
They actually line it that way.
That's-
for several sports.
It's gonna be close to the actual track, you know, so far, boat track, and so far, there's a dimension that what you call soccer has to have. The dimensions, I believe, are, we have
It's usually larger than a football.
I'm sorry?
Soccer
It's
field.
wider than a football field.
Yes.
So obviously you have to widen the field, which means you have to come close to the track. And I believe like I checked it today, that we do have enough space to be able to, on both schools, to do, I think for soccer, at Kenjamin Chanje. But it just seems to me that it'd be more appropriate to do just, what do you call the turf at the soccer, and that's what goes to, leave the football field as it is. That's my one comment I'd like to make, and I didn't think about that before, but I like to think about it now. Secondly, insofar as the funding for the project, there's some confusion about what the district taxpayer is going to be paying. If you look at the borrowing required for priority 1 and 2 improvements, it says 26 million approximately. Now, the state reimburses 15 million of that, 55% on that money, correct?
Correct.
So the actual cost of the taxpayer is approximately 14 million and change. Am I correct in that? It's important to know that we're not borrowing almost 27 million. We're actually paying only for 14,600,000, yes or no? Am I correct in that or not?
You realize you have to make the expenditures.
I understand that.
And then
but
the revenue.
I understand that the revenue comes in, but the taxpayer,
bonding does have to be paid.
I understand.
The net effect is what you're saying, but we do have to bond.
I understand. But it's important for the community members to realize that we're not paying 26 million for priority 1 and priority 2 projects. I'm sorry, my time is up. That's all.
Okay, Dr. Bisbee?
No, the time is up for this discussion.
For everything.
So-
We can have a motion to extend time for discussion if the board has other questions they would like to ask.
I'll make a motion to extend time.
Mr. Lumia made a motion, a second.
Yes.
Mr. Soma.
Extended by no more than 10 minutes.
To extend it for, okay, well, that's an amendment.
Yes.
So do you accept that amendment, Mr. Lumia, of only 10 minutes to extend it, or do you?
Okay, fine.
Okay, well, then we don't need to vote on the separate amendment since Mr. Lumia modified his motion and Mr. Soma seconded. All right, all those in favor of extending discussion? Those opposed? Mrs. Laval was opposed, everyone else was in favor, okay? All right, other questions? Dr. Bisbee.
The question I have is, first, thanks for the presentation. The question I have is on project budget arts improvement. It says 3,719,000. I just want to understand this. What are the things included in arts improvement? What is this about?
It's, most of it goes into improving through high school auditoriums.
Auditorium.
New seating is expensive. Sound systems, lighting systems are expensive. There is a price, there's another bit of data that was circulating with the committee that outlined each of those items and what those prices are. I'll make sure that the board has a copy that shows the price.
Thank you.
Mr. Rubin.
For purposes of clarification, Mr. Lumi, I think when you used the term turf, you were talking about artificial turf, because there's natural turf as well.
Absolutely.
Well, the reason that I'm asking is that, what if this board were to decide to just remove artificial turf out of this project? Does the board have that option to do that? I mean, I'm as big a fan of artificial turf as I am of aluminum bats. I'm not a fan of aluminum bats, but that's just a personal thing. But, okay, thank you. Thank you, Peggy.
Since we're on the subject of artificial turf, I also have some questions about artificial turf. I think I brought this up last year, perhaps at the Capital Improvement Committee meeting. There's been reports of more severe injuries on some forms of artificial turf. There's been some question about whether the abrasion on the turf creates a powder that's worse to inhale than normal dirt. And there's also been, I've heard from a number of the coaches that the turf gets so hot during summer practices that the kids actually get burns from the turf. Now, I realize that this may not be the turf that you're considering, since there's more than one variety of artificial turf, but have you considered these issues and looked into it so that we know that if we spend money for artificial turf, that it's better than plain old dirt rather than more of a hazard?
The State Education Department a few years ago put a moratorium on artificial turf until they studied it, and they have since approved it and they've been doing it in schools. There are also, because of those issues, there are a number of different materials being developed that take the place of what's commonly used in artificial turf. We haven't investigated those. They all have an impact on the cost and availability, but there are other products that are available to mitigate some of those issues that we're talking about.
And I just recently spoke with Carl Thurnauer, State Ed, about 6 months ago, and he confirmed that they're still aiding it, and that, the verdict's out on artificial turf, and they didn't feel the need to not aid it anymore.
Also following up on that, how about the environmental impact, since we have to do secret on artificial turf? And what is the environmental impact of artificial turf rather than dirt?
I cannot get into that. I know that there is an environmental impact of installing lights that's very apparent. The impact in terms of the environmental impact for the artificial field, it is a known and accepted system. So the impact is the amount of area that you are disrupting, taking everything apart and putting in a drainage system. And because of the size of that field, that is where the state environmental quality review act kicks in.
So, excuse me. So it would, even if we used regular sod, it would still require secret approval. I'm sorry, I stole your question.
No, good.
It wouldn't. Sod would be just a refurbishing of what you have.
So we wouldn't need to have to do the secret. We wouldn't have to do the secret process if we elected to remain with natural turf.
If you elected to remain with natural turf and did not elect to put in new lights, you could classify it as a type 2.
Oh, the lights. Okay.
And then you don't have to do the environmental.
Okay.
The amount of disturbance of the soil. So if you disturb more than an acre, it's going to kick into it.
Dr. Risby.
Yeah, the other question I have is the goal number 1, you talked about install carbon monoxide detector.
Yes.
The other thing I just want to know that according to the EPA guidelines, there should be a radon detection also, or you don't do that, radon?
Radon detection,
Yeah.
I know
Which is also a health hazard now, considered.
they're not required. You can do radar detection testing, and it's actually done. You can actually just order the sensors and do it yourself. It is a district unit. Prior to my arrival here, I found some documents saying that the radar was tested in some of the lower levels.
But it is not a mandatory guidelines for the schools. Okay.
The CO detection was a code that was adopted, building code that was adopted by the state last year. And they realized that once they adopted it, that schools fell into the commercial building.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that came about.
Thank you.
Mr. Lumi.
When should, at which board meeting should we make a decision regarding what we're going to do, if anything? Obviously, that we have to address the ADA requirement, that's obviously, I think it's, when is it, that we have to go back to that page?
The next thing that you should do is authorize start a secret process. It does not commit you to any action, but it does set you up for later on when you decide.
Well, is it meaningful to look at what we want to do first before we do seeker?
You can, there is a time factor in that it takes about 10 days to put the environmental assessment forms together and the letters for the agency, then there's a 30-day waiting period. So you have to factor that in.
I understand. Okay. All right.
other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Rizvi does want to comment.
All right. The next item is the second reading of the proposed revised student health services policy.
No, I don't think, as written, I guess we can stand.
Okay, but Dr. Rizvi wants to comment.
Oh, she can?
Yeah.
Yes, so don't we have to bring forward the motion before she...
Let me just say, let me read it, okay. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the revisions to the Student Health Service Policy number 5420 as stated.
Okay, do we have a motion, please? Mr. Soma, second. Mrs. Pelton, discussion. Dr. Rizvi.
Yeah, it's a like a question and comment I have. It says that about the dental health certificate, it says parents of students who do not furnish a dental health certificate within 30 days of the commencement of the academic school year will be sent a notice. So my question is that most of the families' priority is to get a medical health insurance, and there are 20% who don't have a health insurance. So what is the next step if the children, they don't have a health insurance, how they are going to obtain a health dental certificate, like how it's going to happen?
I think that this got nothing to do with that. This is not, I think this is not
We have an
our
amendment
policy, isn't it?
to the policy.
Yeah, this is an amendment to the policies.
We're specifically talking, Madam President, about the amendment to the policy.
Yes, about the administration of Narcan.
Oh,
This
in
piece.
bold.
This I
Yes.
cannot talk about? Oh.
Well, not now.
Not now, you could address it as a board comment or a question to the district, and they could let us know. Okay? I'm sorry, that was my error. All right. Is there any further discussion about the specific amendment, which, just to refresh everyone's memory, is to allow for the administration of Narcan by trained nurses whom we have in every school. They will get the training, and it's something that if they give it, it will not be, if the, this is, yes, do you think we'd better read the amendment again? I think that might be good, so the public knows exactly what it is. It's just the administration of Narcan, the amendment there.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about that. It's there. I'm not sure that's.
Okay, all right, you don't think it's necessary? All right, okay, well, basically, is there any further discussion, or are we ready to vote? All right, all those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. All right, the consent agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to pull anything from the consent agenda? Mrs. Pelton?
803.
80, isn't it
Not
7?
consent.
We're on the 7th. Consent is 7, the 7th. Okay, anybody? Yes, Mrs. LaBelle.
I would like to pull 708, 709, 710, and 711.
Is there anyone else who wishes to pull anything? Mr. Rubin?
705.
Anything else? Mr. Lumia?
Just 12 and 13 and 14. Just a quick comment I want to make.
You want to pull that or no?
Yes, 12, 13 and 14.
Okay. All right. Is that it? All right, Mr. Rubin?
This is easy one. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the following consent agenda items as stated. 702, 703, 704, 706, and 707.
One is as amended.
Excuse me, 702 as amended. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Could we have a motion? Mr. Lumia, second. Mrs. Pelton, all in favor? Unanimous. All right? All right. Now, 705.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby authorize the superintendent of schools to sign the following consent agreements as stated.
Do we have a motion? Mr. Lumia, second. Dr. Isby, discussion?
Thank you. I had asked to pull that because I just had a question on this. In regards to the physician referenced here, wanted to know if we have on file or if we've otherwise seen appropriate certificates or other documentation that certifies him to practice in the state of New York.
We do.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. 708. Do we have a motion? Mrs. Laval, second. Mr. Lumia, discussion.
I think I do.
Yep, okay, read it.
We're talking 708. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the District Safety Committee, does hereby adopt the district-wide safety plan and the building level safety plans in accordance with Section 155.17 of the regulations of the Commissioner of Education.
Mrs. Laval?
I pulled it because the safety plans, the district-wide safety policy, they're well-intentioned, but they're very broad, comprehensive. There have been concerns from the community about scanning. I feel like we're institutionalizing our children. I don't think in cases of emergency, the best thing to do is to isolate children from their parents. There's just a lot of things in here that cause me concern, and so I'm just not comfortable with it as an entire package.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Carrath, Mr. Rubin, Dr. Risby, and Mrs. Kellen. Opposed? Mrs. Laval. 709.
7.09, resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the new business education course titled Virtual Enterprises for the 2016-2017 school year as detailed in a memo dated January 30th, 2016 from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction to the Superintendent of Schools.
Motion, Mr. Lumia, second. Mrs. Pelton, discussion. Mrs. Laval.
I pulled all three of these for the same reason. I think we need to heed the comments that we got during the public comment session that the public wants to have a voice in the curriculum that we're adopting. I think we're seeing a lot of controversy over the broad kind of jump into new curriculum that we took over the past several years. And I think that we need to kind of learn from our experience and show a little bit of restraint and discussion. And if the public wants to be involved in discussing, and realistically, that's what they're entitled to do. I think we should heed their request and desire to be involved in the discussion of the curriculum. And so I think we should discuss it and table this.
Mrs. Karan.
Perhaps for the new board members, we could have a quick recap, maybe by Dr. Cardwell, as far as how new courses get discussed and how they, how these ideas originate. And is this, Dr. Carrion, is this something that are new courses reviewed, or ideas for new courses reviewed every couple of years? How does this come about? Much the evolution of how we do this.
Well, the evolution of how we do this, and just being here for my third year only, I'm not sure what we have written specifically on policy, but what I can tell you is that based on policy and based on the work from the Strategic Planning Committee, that a different direction was taken in terms of really assuring what kind of courses we're going to adopt into our schools. Therefore, it was at the last presentation that I believe Mr. Lokima also facilitated that indicated, and actually our whole process is posted on our district website. In addition to that, the practice here, I don't think, has been to workshop the items that are the new courses that are going to be approved. I don't think it's been the practice. I think it's been brought up for approval. In addition to that, we do have a curriculum committee in the district, and the district does work with different constituents as they've been working for many years and following that same practice of the curriculum committee. Along with that, we were prepared, and many of our colleagues are here who, if you want to ask specifics, so for example, respectfully, 7.09, new course approval for virtual enterprises. If you have any questions specific to that course, feel free to ask the questions, because our writers and our members are sitting here ready to answer questions that the board may have.
Mrs. Laval?
First, I'd like to thank Dr. Cardwell because she did respond to several of my questions that I
Yes,
had
she did.
earlier today, and it was very helpful. My concern specifically right now is that the community has said that they are not, weren't aware that these courses are being offered, and I myself voiced the concern, expressed the concern that there was a lot on the agenda, and I didn't realize that these two now, according to Ms. Pedro, apparently there is preliminary agenda on the website. I wasn't aware of that. I'm afraid maybe the community wasn't aware of that, so that maybe this information was available sooner than this weekend. But I just felt, 3 new courses on top of everything else that was in the agenda Friday night was kind of a lot to absorb by tonight. And after speaking with Dr. Cardwell, I feel like the process was well done. But again, my concern now is that we heed the concerns of the community, that they feel that they have not had an opportunity to voice any concerns or opinion on the new curriculum.
Mr. Rubin.
Mr. Lumi, I just got a question, because I really don't remember this in my tenure on the board. Do you remember us ever approving new course offerings? Because I don't. I think this is very laudable to even
We have approved courses before, and we've asked many times before proposals comes forward. They have a presentation, and then the board asks questions on that particular presentation. Yes, they have made presentations to the board regarding new course approval.
Well, I think this is
And so this is not the first time. Whenever a new course comes in, you look at the course, see if you have any questions on it, and ask the people who approve. That's the only thing, get informed. And I think these particular course approval, were they on the webpage, the actual course?
And the process is on the
And the
webpage, and
process
that
on the
was brought up by
webpage,
Mr. Lokima, how when strategic planning came about, one of the issues with the district and streamlining the process where we can actually assess, analyze, and look at courses that we have, courses that we intend to bring into our schools, and that was all in the presentation as well.
I believe these courses are student-generated, correct? Most of them are
Yes, they are.
student-generated, not parent-generated, student-generated, what they want to see in their curriculum, student-generated courses. And I think that this is the case.
Just,
I could be wrong, but
Dr. Isby?
I'm just wondering, if I have not read about this course, how can I improve this course? I'm just trying to understand. If I-
It's all public.
Dr. Rizvi, in all due,
Maybe I didn't read that.
Dr. Rizvi, in all due respect, it's our responsibility that once we get that package, late as it might be, we have a weekend to read the particular proposals. And you can get informed. Obviously, if you didn't read it, you can't vote on it. But it seems to me it's your obligation, everybody else on this board obligation, to read exactly what's in that packet, so we can make informed decisions.
Well, if I could just say one more thing quickly too, is that I don't know if we're talking about the courses or we're talking about a process. And if we're talking about a process, then this is not the time, respectfully saying, that this is not the time to bring this up.
I agree.
This actually 7.09, 7.10, 7.11, if the district is saying, Mr. Carrion, the board is saying, Mr. Carrion, we want you to look at a process, then that's a different conversation specifically to these specific courses that the practice has been in existence. In addition to that, this came about from the community. Members of the community, and those of you who were in the core planning team, that was a very diverse group of people. We had teachers, we had administrators, we had parents, board members, and community members. So this whole, the notion of how we actually put a different process in place really came from the entire community, what represents the entire community. And that's why I reiterated that that's what Mr. Lokima presented in the last presentation of what we did with the core planning team. But if it's something that that goes differently from what came from the strategic planning team and re-looking at the process, to me, that's not specific to 7.09 or 7.10 or 7.11. This is specifically to these courses.
Mrs. Laval, do you have any questions specifically about this course that perhaps the people who designed them could answer for us?
No, I got a great deal of information from Dr. Carville earlier today. As a new member of the board, as somebody who, does have concerns about the strategic plan, I'm not sure exactly where or how, and maybe this is my novice as a new board member, but, a member of the community who's very active, very, aware of what goes on in the district, had a similar concern that, that we really didn't have an opportunity to look at this. And I do think that the idea that the agenda was posted at 6, on Friday night and the meeting is tonight, it is significant. It does matter. And, we learn something new every day. Alberta informed us, and I think several people maybe were unaware of it as well, that there is this preliminary agenda up there. And certainly I'll make use of it going forward. But for now, I do have concerns about, as I said, the strategic plan, and particularly the idea that somebody who's so attentive and aware of the board proceedings, the district proceedings, would have a similar concern. I just think it's worth mentioning.
All right, are there any other questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor of 7.09? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Carab, Mr. Rubin, Mr. Selma, Mrs. Kellen. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Mrs. Laval, and Dr. Risby.
7.10. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the new English course titled Begin Your Dream Career for the 2016-2017 school year as detailed in a memo dated January 20th, 2016, from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction to the Superintendent of Schools.
We have a motion, Mr. Lumia, second. Mrs. Karam, discussion. Okay. All those in favor? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Karam, Mr. Rubin, Mr. Selma, Dr. Risby, and Mrs. Kellen. Those opposed? Abstention? Mrs. Laval.
7.11. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the new social studies course titled Film Through History and History Through Film and Cinema for the 2016-2017 year as detailed in a memo dated January 21st, 2016 from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction to the Superintendent of Schools.
Is it English course or social studies course?
Social studies.
Or an amendment?
That's an amendment.
Okay.
Yes.
All right,
Right.
that's fine.
Okay.
Alberta keeps me in line, Joe.
Motion. Mr. Lumia, second. Mrs. Pelton. Discussion. All those in favor? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Karat, Mr. Rubin, Mr. Selma, Dr. Risby, Mrs. Kellen. Opposed? Abstained? Mrs. Laval.
7.12. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby accept the following donations as stated.
Motion. Mr. Lumia, second. Mrs. Pelton. Discussion.
The only reason why I'm bored is very often people donate their time as well as their money. They're not recognized. So I'd just like to make a comment on the recognition of some of the donations that have been made to the district from various people. The shot clock for basketball, Garrett Park, $200,000. That's significant. What else? Custodial service overtime fee, Hudson Valley for $600. Monetary custodial overtime fee room for rentals, so $248. FA10 studio, and I could go on and on and on. I mean, I would like to just say that many people donate, and unfortunately, not many of them are recognized. So 13, whatever it is, 13, 14, and 15 deal with those particular things, I believe. So please read on board docs all these donations.
Thank you. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Right?
7.13. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the donations for advisorships as stated below.
Motion. Mrs. Pelton, second. Mr. Lumia, discussion.
Now, other than, again, I'm grateful for the donation that these individuals give to the district. That's it.
All
That
those-
could work for board member comments, too.
What?
That could work for board member comments.
You don't want
You want me to say?
I mean, it's a great thing that you acknowledge them. I commend you for that.
Oh, okay. Do I get a free dinner maybe?
Maybe.
All those in favor? Unanimous. All right.
7.14. Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby accept the BOCES Arts and Education Program donations as stated. Do I have to read this also below? No, because it
Motion?
says this.
Okay, Rhea.
Be it further resolved on the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools that the Board of Education increases the 2015-2016 General Fund Budget Code A2110A00 490000 and estimated revenue code A12705, gifts and donations in the amount of $2,755 to fund the BOCES Arts and Education Program.
Motion? Okay, Mr. Lumia, second. Mr. Selma, discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
I'm not sure what I have to say the first time.
Okay, let me get to that. Okay. 8.01, acknowledge receipt of financials.
Resolved that the Board of Education does acknowledge receipt of the December 2015 financial reports.
Motion, Mrs. Pelton. Second, Mr. Lumia. Discussion. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. 8.02, approval of the Smart School Bond Act investment plan.
Be it resolved that the Wappinger Central School District Board of Education has developed a technology plan and received SED approval of the technology plan. Developed the Smart Schools Bond Act investment plan as advertised on the district's website for 30 days and has held a public hearing on this date, January 25th, 2016. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education hereby authorizes the superintendent of schools or his designee to submit the Wappinger Central School District Smart Schools Bond Act investment plan to New York State Education Department for review and approval, and and be it further resolved that the Wappingers Board of Education hereby approves the investment plan as stated.
Motion, Mr. Lumia. Second, Mrs. Karam. Discussion. Mrs. Lavelle.
It's not my intention, it wasn't my intention to be provocative for the sake of it, but we really are putting garbage in front of our children, and there's a lot in terms of the technology that obviously is great, but I feel again that the plan and the Smart Schools Bond Act in general, it just encompasses so much, and when we put it all together, we just put the dangers right in front of our children, and so I'm opposed to the use of the School Bond Act until we can really have the level of protection that we need for our children.
Any other comments, Mrs. Karam?
Is there an opportunity after the application is submitted for any type of revisions, or is there, what we submit is a done plan? What's the process, just quickly, like 30 seconds, what's the process like after that application?
No, I think you can always amend something that you sent to the State Education Department, I think. But to consider this whole process, Mr. Lokino, who has been our project leader, we have an entire committee with community members that have met substantially to discuss. I think we started July and June of the former school year. So, but I'm sure that just like any plan that gets submitted to the State Education Department, as well as grants that we put in for it, if there was something that required immediate revision, we could definitely put in for it and get it amended.
Yeah, and the purpose of the last 30 plus days was this revision period internally. Made a presentation to the board, had the next 30 plus days, December 14th, to make questions, have questions, make amendments to it. And now here we are committing to the final implementation plan. Had no revisions, no feedback.
So time's of the essence to be able to obtain this funding? No?
There's no timeline on how to spend it.
Just to begin it, begin the process.
The piece is 1.4 million out of 5.2 that the district has been allocated. We're going to have future implementation plans. We're going to have other components to it that are going to be really related to forecast areas that we're about to spend from. And we're going to move forward in a similar manner. Then to you the initial plan, have that comment period, make any revisions, submit to you a final proposed plan, and then submit that to the state to approve.
Thank you.
Mrs. Lavelle.
Is this the piece that's limited to the presentation that you did where we talked about basically it was whiteboards and...
Yes.
Yes, that's their role.
Yes. Mr. Lillian.
No, that's what I was going to say. There's a presentation was done, basically with smart boards and the lock doors and so forth, nothing else. So, again, and again, a committee was formed to make those decisions.
Mr. Rubin.
And might I say that it's extremely laudable, in my opinion, that the locks are being included in this first phase, as unfortunately this is a post-Newtown, post-alumni world. Thank you.
And for the information of some of the people here whose children are in private or parochial schools, the Smart Bonds Act also, your schools are getting money too, and it was passed on through the district to your schools, and you will have an opportunity also in your schools to get some of these things. Mr. Lokema gave a very good presentation at a previous board meeting of exactly what the committee had decided on. Then we had the comment period, as Mr. Carrion mentioned, where people submitted questions, and the questions and answers were on the website, are still there if you'd like to take a look. And we had 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting tonight for people to add anything in addition. All right? Is there anything else anyone wants to say, or are we ready to vote? All right. All those in favor? Unanimous. 8.03, approval of change in start time.
Whereas in order to more efficiently transport district students to their assigned schools, the district desires to restructure its current three-tier transportation system into a two-tier system, which would necessitate changes in school start times. Whereas studies have shown that the later start times provide secondary students with more opportunities for success, while earlier start times for elementary students have been shown to better correlate with the sleep cycles of the younger students. And whereas goals of student safety and realizing more time for extracurricular activities for elementary students would be promoted by later start times for the secondary students and earlier start times for the elementary students, be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves changes for the start times for the high schools, junior highs, and elementary schools as follows. Start time for all high schools shall be changed from 7:17 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. Start time for all junior high schools shall be changed from 7:50 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. Start time for all elementary schools shall be changed from 8:50 a.m. to 8:30 a.m.
Could we have a motion? Mr.
Keep going, Penny.
Okay. Excuse me, but public comments were before. Mr. Lumia? Mr. Lumia moved. Second. Mr. Rubin. Discussion. Mrs. Pelton.
Due to the vastly different impacts amongst the 6 scenarios that were given, I would like to make a motion that the board tables this until we are given a specific scenario as well as an end time to the schools.
applaud or call out. Thank you very much. Mr. Rubin seconded. All right. Discussion?
I think it's appropriate that this further discussion has to come about. I mean, I cannot approve this unless we see which scenario, although some people talk about scenario 6, which is crazy, but in any event, I think we should attach a scenario before we can take a vote on this particular thing. So I think a further discussion should take place, and I don't think we vote on this today.
Okay.
Please don't oppose either.
Yeah, please don't. Okay. Mrs. Laval?
I agree for all the reasons that were expressed by the public tonight. We can't trade one class of students' burden for another, and I think that there's just a lot more information that we need before we can approve this.
Okay. Any other comments? Dr. Risby?
I think the parents have a valid concern about the different age group going in the same bus, so I'm also in favor of table the discussion.
Mr. Carrion?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that publicly the board understands that from the beginning with Ms. Crandall making the presentations, we provided scenarios. We did everything just to show the board. And we clearly indicated from the very beginning, it is the board's decision. We're not pushing an agenda in terms of saying that this is what we're indicating to do. We were given a task, and we went through the task. We provided the scenario, so I completely respect you bringing up that resolution in terms of tabling and providing the additional information, as well as the recommended scenario that we would give to the board.
Any other comments or discussion? All right. All those in favor of tabling? Excuse me, Mr. Selma.
I just have a comment that this elementary school will start at 8:30 instead of 8:50. 8:50, they're changing it to earlier time.
Yes.
But do you think we can do something about that for younger children?
No, we didn't vote on tabling it. Wait a minute. Mr. Selma, I'm sorry. Yes, you were saying yes.
No, I'm a little concerned about the elementary school changing from 8:50 to 8:30.
Point of order. Point of order.
Yes, point of order. Yeah, we have.
Point of order. We're talking about the amendment
Tabling.
now, not about this.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this can be discussed.
Okay.
This can be discussed afterwards.
Thank
Right
you.
now,
Thank
what
you.
we're doing is we're talking about voting on the amendment to table. Okay, well, it's not really an amendment, it's a motion to table.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any other comments or discussion solely on tabling? Okay, all those in favor
Of what?
of tabling
Tabling.
the approval of change in
Sure.
start time?
Yeah.
Okay, could I see the hands again, please?
Yes.
Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Karat, Mr. Rubin, Mrs. Laval, Mr. Selma, Dr. Risby. Okay, and I abstain. All right. Because of some confusion on the agenda, in the agenda, we have to change some of the protocol of the order on the agenda, so everybody knows what's going on. Okay. Due to the protocol of approval order, the Board of Education will consider the secret resolutions before the approval of the funding of each project, which makes sense, but it was printed otherwise. Okay. Therefore, the secret resolutions 8.05 and 8.07 will be read before items 8.04 and 8.06 as follows. Okay. 8.05. May I have a motion and a second regarding item 8.05 on the agenda, the adoption of the James S. Evans Elementary School roof replacement secret type 2 action as detailed in item 8.05 on the agenda. Would someone make a motion?
Yes.
Mrs. Karan. Second, Mr. Selma. Okay, discussion? Vote. All right. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. All right, then. 8. No, we have to do the 8.04. 8.04. Do we have to do both secrets before the specific? Okay, all righty. Okay, 8.07. May I have a motion and a second regarding item 8.07 on the agenda, the adoption of the district-wide carbon monoxide detector project secret type 2 action as detailed in item 8.07 on the agenda. Do we have a motion?
Yes.
Mr. Soma, second. Mr. Lumia, discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. 8.04. May I have a motion and a second regarding item 8.04 on the agenda for the approval of the James S. Evans Elementary School roof replacement project as detailed in item 8.04 on the agenda. Motion, Mr. Lumia. Second, Mr. Soma. Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Item 8.06. May I have a motion and a second regarding item 8.06 on the agenda for the approval of the district-wide carbon monoxide detector project as detailed in item 8.06 on the agenda. Motion, Mr. Rubin, second. Mr. Soma, all those in favor? Unanimous. Oh, sorry, discussion? You had any? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. 9.01, Legislative Action Committee. Okay. Basically, just to remind everyone, we had last July, the board voted to create a legislative action committee. Has there been any action on the legislative action committee? Has the charter been formed?
May I interject something?
Yes, Mr. Rubin.
Just as an interjection, preliminary on that, I'd like it to be known, and I only found out about this at our last Dutchess County BOCES meeting, that as an organization representative of each individual, of all the individual school districts, Dutchess County BOCES does have a legislative liaison. Ralph Giamento happens to be in the Spackenkill district, I believe. And from correspondence that I've received from him, it's part of his responsibility, I believe, is to take our concerns, our thoughts on what should happen, and funnel them through him for action to the legislature as and he would do it on our behalf, but as a representative of the Dutchess County BOCES. So it would have more, it was thought, I believe, that any ideas, any concerns, any thoughts would have more weight coming from the county rather than from an individual school district. So I would suggest that if we do establish that we have authorized that we're going to do this committee, that any recommendations that the committee have be funneled, I guess, through this entire board and then subsequently, if approved, through myself to the Dutchess County BOCES liaison so that action can be taken further. And I would subsequently, any information report that came back, since I'm the current person, anything that I heard back, I would report back to the board. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Lumia.
Just a reminder, we all got this particular attachment so far as the mission of the Legislative Action Committee. Based on what you just said, now I'll review what the mission was: the fight against unfunded mandates, all school district. The mission is to advocate for the fight against unfunded mandates, all school district taxpayers, all students in our school district, reduce tax burdens, funding for education, local control of our schools, efficient and effective government. And these are actions, I think, that should be taken care of by Mr. what his name is. And I think these are, in my opinion, these are legislative actions. There's something that belongs to the legislator. I don't think it belongs on a school board. That's my opinion. And at the time I voted for the particular committee, after reading this, I'm not in favor of this. So as far as I'm concerned, these are legitimate concerns, which I would suggest you take to the person from Spack and Kill and see what they can do. And I don't think it's our job to get them to do this.
Okay. Mrs. Saval.
I was under the impression that the Legislative Action Committee was on hold because we were waiting for someone from NISBA who was going to come and help us develop our policy manual, and the policy manual was going to help us in organizing our committees. That was my understanding, that our committees were basically on hold until we got our policy manual straightened out, and that hasn't happened yet. In addition to that, we are the second largest independent district in New York State outside of the municipalities, and I don't think that we should limit our legislative action activities through the Dutchess County School Boards Association. We are big enough to have a voice of our own, and if the Dutchess County School Board is comprised of the school boards in Dutchess County, then we do acknowledge that it's appropriate for school boards to engage in legislative action, and I think that is part of the discussion for us when we develop the committee, and not necessarily here, unless we're abandoning the idea that we're going to engage in this discussion under the NISBA policy development process.
Dr. Risney.
I agree with Mr. Lumia.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Lumia. We should not get directly involved into this legislative action or committee like that. I'm not in favor of that.
Okay. Mr. Rubin.
Respectfully, Mrs. Lavelle, I would suggest that your motion would be something, we are already a member of the Dutchess County School Boards Association, and this is something that they are pursuing, and we as a member have in the past apparently supported this, that I would say that your motion is premature, that if the board approves what Mr. Lumia is saying, I can certainly bring that here, and if you have a concern, I would suggest that you ask to have that as an agenda item. The board can discuss it, and then if it's approved, I can take that concern, I can back to the Dutchess County School Boards, be able to suggest that is separate and different from what we're talking about here. I'm sorry.
Does anyone want to make a motion in relation to the Legislative Action Committee, since we established it last summer, but at this time, I don't know how many people are on the committee. That hasn't done anything. It hasn't written a charter. Mrs. Laval is on the committee. Is anyone else on the committee?
I resigned.
Mr. Lumia resigned. Mr. Soma, are you still on the committee?
As of now, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Mrs. Laval and Mr. Soma are on the committee, so I think perhaps we need their Mr. Soma, would you like to add your feelings about the committee?
I think we know those here. We can want to talk next time, next meeting.
But I'm like Officio, I'm just, as a president, we need, excuse me, Mr. Lee?
Well, we're not there.
All right. Basically, this is to discuss what you would like to do with the committee. And,
May I ask something?
yes, certainly, Mr. Rubin.
Okay. The committee aside, Mr. Lumia, you had a number of items there that you had read. You had read off those items about what the concerns are and what we should do going forth. And may I ask as a separate, as part of this discussion, but an initial part, that if the board approves, John, you may want to read it again, that I can certainly take those concerns to our next Dutchess County BOCES meeting and see how to proceed with it from there, if the board approves that.
Mrs. Laval?
I'm very confused about what we're discussing here. Have we or have we not decided that the committees were going to be on hold until NISBA came and helped us develop our policy manual? That's my first question. My other question is, are we discussing like abolishing the committee outside of the committee before the committee's ever been established through, I just don't know what we're discussing here.
I don't really know either. That's why I'm asking. People had wanted to discuss it, so we put it on the agenda, and I assumed that they were going to bring up something at some point. Mrs. Belton.
I'm not sure where the communication came from that it was waiting on the NISBA rep. My understanding being the policy chair is the only thing that we're waiting for from the NISBA policy rep is a meeting to go over the first 3,000. From my perspective, seeing this on the agenda, I thought it was to look and see what the committee has done from this point forward, look at where they're at, look at the direction where they're going, and see what success has been there. So is there a chair for this committee?
My understanding is that Mr. Bloom is the chairman for the committee. And we should meet at least one time before we finalize.
If I may, I think I resigned from that committee. I think it was apparent many months ago. I'm not sure when it was. I'll tell you exactly what my feelings are. First of all, these concerns are legitimate concerns that should be brought to you, to the, what do you call it, to the
board approved.
To the board, them to approve it, and if they're approved, to bring to the BOCES for the representative. My second thing is, personally, I don't think there's a need for this particular committee. You know, as a board member, I would like to see the abolishment of it. So that's, I'm very blunt and to the point. So I would like to see a vote by the board whether we should continue with this, even though they've never met, whether there's a legitimacy to the committee, or where these concerns should be addressed by Dutchess BOCES as well as legislators, and not me personally or this board personally. So two things. Number one, I would like to see a motion. I'll make the motion that the mission, as stated by one of our constituents, the mission of the legislative committee action is to advocate for. I will list the 6, 7 things, whatever they are, and we'll take a vote on whether we want Mr. Rubin to go to bring these concerns to that particular individual, who in turn can bring it up to the slave legislators. That's the first thing we should do. The second thing.
Could we just do one at a time?
Fine, let's do that.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that that Mr. Rubin brings the following concerns to the BOCES, Dutchess Board Association, and they are the following.
The liaison.
The liaison, whatever the liaison is.
Yeah.
So,
It's not
Which,
BOCES.
I don't have.
Dutchess BOCES.
Dutchess School Board
Excuse me, okay. All right, first of all, I'm a little confused because those lists of supposed concerns or what the Legislative Action Committee was doing, I don't recall that, but perhaps Mrs. Pedro remembers from the minutes in July. I don't recall that any such thing was done. I thought the committee, the Legislative Action Committee, would write a charter and decide on what those goals were, and then we would, the board would vote on them. To the best of my knowledge, these were never created either by the committee or approved by the board, so I don't know where this particular list came from. Yes, Mrs. Belton.
I have a couple of questions and then perhaps a suggestion. Has the committee actually met at this point?
We discussed with regard to policy manual that
we
would not have any of the committees for
I
our
understand.
charters until the policy was developed for the manner to
I
I understand
write
that,
up a
but we
charter. So
understand.
no,
Okay,
because
so
as far as I know,
are there
it doesn't.
members, how many members are in this committee?
Mrs. Laval and Mr. Soma and myself ex officio as president. But yes, actually, I do recall, Mrs. Laval, that was discussed, and the charters for new committees should not be written until we went over the policy. We have an already existing audit committee. We have a capital improvement committee. They wrote their charters back before we went into the revision of these. We have a public relations committee that has not been meeting this year because they've been, the district has been doing the things like set up the website and answering questions on the web that they had asked them to do, and so there's been no need to meet. And I think that's the state of the committees at this, and the policy committee has met several times and is awaiting more information. So I guess the issue now really is whether the Legislative Action Committee should meet before the policy committee gets to that, or whether it should be, should wait. Well, actually, three choices: for them to meet and write a charter now, to wait for a policy committee, or Mr. Lumia was suggesting, and Mr. Rubin, that it was not necessary to have the committee at all, and that therefore perhaps it should be abolished. So that looks like three choices, and so if someone would like to make a motion one way or another on these. Yes, unless we need more discussion. Excuse me. Okay, Mr. Selman, then Mr. Rubin, then Dr. Rizvi.
Based on the information I got, I hear from Mr. Rubin, I think the policy, this committee should be abolished.
May I say something?
Yes, Mr. Rubin.
Just a correction. If I gave the impression that I was advocating that, at this point that is, that this committee be abolished, I am not doing that at this point. What I'm suggesting is that either way, either the board or this committee, if this committee continues, that I be the liaison and take those concerns to the subsequent other parties. So whether or not the committee exists, I'm not advocating for it or against it at this point publicly. Just a correction.
Point of clarification. We belong to two organizations, Dutchess County BOCES, which Mr. Rubin is on the board, and also the Dutchess County School Boards Association, to which Mrs. Karath is our official representative. Exactly which organization are we?
I don't think Dutchess County School Boards has I don't think the Dutchess County School Boards Association, I don't think the Dutchess County School Boards Association has a legislative liaison. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that Dutchess BOCES does.
I do know that the New York State School Boards Association, of which Dutchess County School Boards Association is a part, has professional lobbyists up in Albany. As a matter of fact, the next item on the agenda relates to that. So,
I'll just show you that.
Would it be possible to table this, since it's board discussion, to another meeting so that we would be able to?
The 10 minutes are up.
Okay,
all right. Well, if you'd like to make a motion to that effect, Mrs. Karan, or if somebody else wants to, and then...
I make a motion in light of all of our input thus far that we table this to another, for another meeting.
Okay, second.
Okay, just a question.
Yes, Mr. Selman.
Instead of putting it off, table it, can we make a motion and get it over with now?
It doesn't have
If
any
we
party,
want,
so you're
whether we
resigning.
want to
Does it
abolish
have
or not.
members?
Well, we could vote down tabling it and then vote, make another motion to abolish it or to write a charter or whatever you would like.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, we have a motion to table it. Do we have a second to that motion? Mrs. Lavon? Okay, is there further discussion on tabling?
I'm not sure the tabling is the right time, the right thing at this point. I would just, my personal thing is I'd like to have the two remaining members, and perhaps yourself, Madam President, meet at some point and just, as a committee, decide whether or not the committee has a useful function at this point and make that recommendation back to us. But that's just a discussion, not part of what we're talking about.
Mrs. Laval.
As I recall, one of the possibilities for the committee, and one of the reasons it was on hold, was whether or not there would be representatives from the public on the committee. We didn't draw a charter, and so there are several issues that need to be discussed, and so I do think it's appropriate for us to table it and consider it again. I don't think that we're locally elected officials, locally elected representatives, and I do think that we need to consider the size of the district, the fact that we're locally elected, that it is appropriate for us to engage in discussion of potential legislative action activity. And so I think we need to table this, and it warrants further discussion.
Dr. Risby.
The question I had, do we have a choice to move a motion to abolish this committee?
Well, first we have the motion on the floor to table it to this discussion to another meeting. If you vote that down, and if you table it, then we don't discuss it anymore tonight. If you vote against tabling it, someone can make a motion to abolish it, to ask the people to write a charter by a certain date, or anything else you like. But first we have the motion on the table, to table it. So basically.
So I would like to go for that.
Okay. Well, we vote. Is there any more discussion on tabling? Okay. All those in favor of tabling the discussion on the legislative committee? Okay. Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Caraff, Mrs. Laval, Mrs. Kellett. Those opposed to tabling? Mr. Rubin, Mr. Soma. And
I'm not in favor of table.
and against tabling, and Dr. Risby, then raise your hand.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that was Mr. Soma, Dr. Risby, and Mr. Rubin were opposed. And Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Caraff, Mrs. Laval, and Mrs. Kellett make 5. We always need 5 people, even if some people are absent, just so everyone understands that, all right? Yes, so it is tabled, so it will be discussed on another meeting, at which time someone can make a motion to take it off the table, and we can discuss it from there. All right. 9.02. Okay. Approval to attend NISBA Capital Conference, February 28th to 29th, 2016. All right. Basically, we're asking for volunteers, so anyone who wants on the board, all board members are members of NISBA, and so if you would like to go to the conference in Albany on Sunday afternoon and evening from 3:30 to 8:30, they're going to be giving training for lobbying. The next day, we will be going under NISBA's direction to lobby our legislators at the state capitol. And just for your information, the district has no money for overnight accommodations. So if you're going both times, you have to drive both ways or pay for your own hotel room. Okay? Yes.
Thank you. Is she still here, Mrs. Crandall? She correct me if, there she is. If I'm wrong, she had responded to an email of mine that the board does have available to it $95 for memberships, $451.97 for conferences, and $1,021.68 for supplies. So there is some money in that. Additionally, what I'd like to say is that I personally called today the Hilton, whichever one this was, Hilton Albany, and asked them about if they still had the overnight rooms at $179. What they had told me at that point was that block of rooms is already done, But since I am an employee of the district, because I'm a district trustee, they have rooms available to me for $115 a night. Plus, if I had a tax exempt certificate, I wouldn't have to pay tax on that. So what I was told this afternoon was that if anybody staying overnight at the Hilton might be able to get a room for $115, not the $178 that is no longer available. That was mentioned as the standout. Thank you.
All right, could I see a show of hands of all those people who are interested in going to Albany? Okay. Mrs. Carra, Mr. Rubin, Mrs. Kelland, is there anybody else? Any members of the legislative committee? Would you like to go?
I'll be on vacation.
Mrs. Laval?
No, thank you.
No, okay. All righty, so we have 3 people, and so then would you read resolve?
Resolve the Board of Education authorizes the district clerk to make reservations for the board trustees. Who's going to speak? Mrs. Garage, Mrs. Kelland, and myself to attend the NYSBA Capital Conference on February 28th, 29th, 2016 in Albany, New York. As members of NYSBA, there is no registration fee to attend this event.
Okay. Could we have a motion, please? Yes. Mr. Soma, second. Mrs. Laval, all in favor? Unanimous. All right, which brings us to 9.03, Gap Elimination Adjustment and Foundation Aid Resolution. Okay. And we have a very long resolution here. Would you read it for us, Mr. Rubin?
Do we get to charge you by the word? Whereas the cost involved in providing an appropriate public education to every student, reading classes make this hard, to every student in New York State as mandated in the New York State Constitution continues to increase due to factors beyond the control of local school boards, including but not limited to increased cost of external services required to meet the state to meet state requirements, and the ever-increasing cost of teacher and employee retirement plans and contractual benefits. And whereas the unprecedentedly low inflation rate this year means that the New York State tax levy cap for the 2016-2017 year will likely be close to 0%, allowing little or no increase in overall school tax revenues. And whereas the aforementioned increase in mandated costs are in no way exempted or counted in the calculation of the annual tax levy cap, and whereas since its inception, $8.8 billion statewide has been lost to the state under the gap elimination adjustment, and the Wappinger Central School District alone has lost over $48,392,833. And whereas New York State Controller Thomas P. DiNapoli projects a $3 billion New York State budget surplus for 2015, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District calls upon Governor Andrew Cuomo to include both repeal of the gap elimination adjustment and an increase in school foundation aid in its executive budget, and resolve that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District calls upon the New York State Assembly and New York State Senate to actively support gap elimination adjustment repeal and significantly increase foundation aid in the coming budget negotiations. And resolve that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District calls upon Governor Andrew Cuomo, the New York State Assembly, and the New York State Senate to oppose the adoption of any budget which does not include gap elimination adjustment repeal and significantly increased foundation aid. And further be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District calls upon all members of the Wappingers community to contact their elected representatives in Albany, to demand immediate action to repeal gap elimination adjustment and to increase foundation aid to all school districts statewide. The Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District directs the clerk to send a copy of this resolution to Andrew Cuomo, Governor of the State of New York, Carl Heastie, Speaker of the New York State Assembly, John Flanagan, the Majority Leader of the New York State Senate, Catherine Nolan, Assemblywoman, Chair, Committee on Education, Dee Dee Barrett, Assembly Member, District 106, Karen Michael Layler, Assembly Member, District 105, Sue Serino, New York State Senator, Dutchess County School Boards Association.
Thank you. Motion, Mrs. Pelton. Second, Mr. Selman. Discussion. Mr. Lumia.
I believe the current proposal is to eliminate the gap, get rid of all gap elimination for 17, 18 years, I believe. Presently, I think there's a Senator Flanagan, I believe it is. He wants to pass a resolution this year. And I guess he will not pass the budget unless he eliminates the gap elimination this year. So I think that's the status of it. But I agree, I think regardless of what you said in this particular letter, I think it's appropriate.
Okay. Any other comments? Mrs. Laval.
I just have to point out the irony of the section where we say, further be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District calls upon all of the members of the Wappinger community to contact their elected representatives in Albany to demand immediate action to repeal the gap elimination adjustment and to increase foundation aid to all school districts statewide. We work for them. We're supposed to be taking what they want to Albany, having a discussion about dissolving the Legislative Action Committee where we represent them to Albany. We're going to tell them to represent us to Albany. I think it's inappropriate.
Okay. Mr. Rubin.
Should this resolution pass, I would just like to request that if we receive any responses from any of these aforementioned people, that the superintendent would probably bring those responses forth so that the public knows who's listening to us and who's not.
Mrs. Karath and I attended a lobbying meeting of the Dutchess School Boards Association, and representatives from NYSBA, New York State School Boards Association, came and spoke with us about these different issues. And they suggested that lobbying day up in February up in Albany would be even more effective if indeed parents came with us and other members of the community. So may we extend to you that they think it would be a great idea if other people would like to come along. And that's, I think, what we're saying in this resolution, that the need to assist the local taxpayers because, let's face it, Albany loves to pass all sorts of wonderful programs and plans and doesn't like to fund them. So they look like the wonderful people, and this is a bipartisan problem up there, let's face it. It's gone on for decades. And then they tell the local counties, municipalities, and school districts, now you get to pay for it. And really a more realistic approach would be good if we accepted the fact that if we want these programs and if everybody thinks they're good, then people would probably support the taxes for them. So I think when we say that we need to point this out, I think it's just common sense that the taxpayers are really in a bind in New York. We have the highest property taxes in the country, and it's pretty outrageous. At the same time, we want decent schools for our children. So we've got a problem here, and I think that's what we're trying to address. Yes, Mrs. Laval.
It just seems to me that rather than, again, the board representing the people who elected us to represent them and their concerns, it certainly looks like a legislative action to me. And we are, as a board, taking legislative action by passing this resolution, but just had a lengthy discussion where people expressed concerns that we shouldn't be acting legislatively as a board. At the very least, if we're going to pass this resolution, I would change the word, I would motion that we change the word calls to invite rather than, I think calling, I mean, we're basically asking them to do it on our behalf, and I don't think that that's appropriate.
Okay, and would you like to make a motion to amend it?
Yes.
The word calls to invites. All right, do we have a second for that? Mrs. Pelton.
You take out the word upon as well?
Calls upon to invites. Okay. All right.
This was drafted before, so now that you're making an amendment, get rid of the
Okay.
word. It will be close to 0%.
Okay, also in paragraph 2, would somebody make an amendment to remove the word likely, because we know that it will indeed be close to 0%.
It's not 0%.
Will be close.
$2.5 million, not 0%. Is it?
Point,
Make a
0.12.
motion to remove the word likely from the second paragraph.
Okay, well, we have to vote first on, we'll vote on that as soon as we vote on the invites. All those in favor of changing? Yes,
You can do it all.
that's what I said. We can,
Do it all in one motion. One motion to make
okay,
corrections.
one motion to make corrections to remove likely from the second paragraph and to change in the last paragraph calls upon to invites. All right? All those,
Wait, we need one more, right.
oh, we have another one.
Where she, Karen, you want to make
We
one?
have, it would be,
Yeah.
whereas New York State Comptroller Thomas P. DiNapoli projects 3 billion New York State surplus for 2016.
Oh, no, it is
Correct?
2015, it's a surplus.
Surplus as of 20, so I stand corrected.
Okay, all those in favor of the changes of invites and removing likely? Okay, Mrs. Laval, Dr. Risby, Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Karat, Mr. Rubin. Did you want those changes or not, Mr. Soma? Mr. Soma and Mrs. Kelly. Okay, so that was unanimous to change.
No, he
that
abstained.
word. Oh, you, I'm
Abstained.
Oh, no, Mr. Soma abstained from those changes. Sorry, thank you. Okay, all right, now, as amended, all those in favor of the resolution as amended? Unanimous. Okay, requests for additions to the agenda. Does anyone have an addition? Okay. Seeing none. It's now open to comments from the public. Again, we have a 30-minute limit, 3 minutes apiece, no personal comments, but this time you can talk about anything you like. That relates to the schools, of course. So, but it doesn't have to be on the agenda, but please not on something that doesn't have anything to do with the school district. Thank you very much. Okay.
My name is John Metzger. Just 2 real quick things. It's getting late. First, the idea about putting the scenario, how the kids are going to get to the schools, along with the new start times. I think that's a great idea. It kind of packages it all in one spot. And you can look at the whole
Could you
thing.
talk into the mic, please, sir?
And the second thing, I would just like to say thank you to all the board members for tabling this, giving me the opportunity to really look at this. It has the potential of having a great effect on all the students in the district, all the parents. I mean, people are taking jobs based on the start times of their children's schools. You know, I know a lot of people that they're waiting in the car to go to work as the kid gets on the bus. You know, so changing that just a little bit could have a real big impact on everybody. So again, I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to take a better look at this. And I think the decision will be better for that. Thank you. Good night.
So turn the microphone on. Turn the microphone, just pull it up.
you. Hi, my name is Tracy Clark, and I live in Wappingers for 25 years. My 4 children are going through the Wappingers district, and I'm also a teacher, so my life is basically about children. Changing the whole topic here somewhat. My point of being here is to request to put freshman sports back into the school budget, preferably this school budget, specifically basketball. My district is, as you had said before, it's one of the largest districts, and we should absolutely have freshman sports. Some of the other things I've been concerned about over the years and feel my children missed out on is some of them I see are finally being addressed. And by the way, the turf field that was up for proposition like 10 years ago, and it wasn't publicized, and we would have gotten matched like $1 million. Just so you know, the turf fields, that you can play 5 sports on a turf field. As far as the burning, that would probably never happen. If it was that hot, you wouldn't be able to play with the index, the New York State law that you can't practice when it's that hot. And the football teams actually have practice fields, but a proper turf field would be able to play soccer, lacrosse, football, field hockey, and track. So it really is a tremendous investment. And we are one of the only districts in our section that doesn't have a turf field. And it's, I find Ketchum embarrassing in many ways. There's not even a bathroom down by the fields. Now we finally have a porta-john, so I'm not sure why. Hopefully the new concession stand has bathrooms, because it's been an embarrassment. I don't know why we don't have busted varsity cheerleaders to games. I don't know why we don't have a marching band. And the lobby needs to be sorely redone for years. It's an embarrassment when hundreds and hundreds of people come into our school, and that's the first thing they see. The trophies had things that, dust and bugs in them. But anyway, it means so I'm going to put all that expensive things aside and ask for one simple thing, to consider restoring one sport at a time, perhaps. I was looking at basketball because there's the greatest demand. You probably don't know, but in this school this year, 75 boys tried out for the basketball team. And of course, you could take 15, 16 or so. The JV basketball team, there was over 60 boys that tried out. 33 of those boys were freshmen. They only usually take about 3 to 5 freshmen. So that means there are 25 kids. And you have nowhere to play when you're a 9th grade boy. There's a small league in St. Martin, but the boys, instead of, they want to be so badly, they want to be part of something, part of a huge school, and they don't have a chance. Besides that, we build the program and sense of pride. And the thing, it would be the best part of this. Well, there's the districts all around us have freshman sports. Gorge does, Arlington does, Carmel, Yorktown, Mayapack, Patton, Greeley, Henhut. So the best part of this is we've looked in, it's $4,100 to reinstate. But to reinstate boys basketball at Ketchum, so I guess it would be double at John Jay. $4,100. Please, can you reach out to the AD? Yes, I know that they're in support of it. I know the coaches are. That would include 12 games. That includes busing, referees. $4,000 is nothing. And I know in the past, not you, but the money has been spent in ridiculous ways, and it really needs to be put to the children. So I hope that it will be in the budget for the next year. Thank you.
My name is Kevin Westerveld. I was here in August on a board meeting with my son who has special needs. No special needs have been done for him at all this year. I keep having meetings and this and that, and nothing's being done. I have the right to speak. It was not posted on the website that this was not allowed to be talked to. As a taxpayer who's lived in this district for 30 years, I do have the right to talk. Okay? You people ignore the kids that need it. You give it to the sports kids. You give it to the kids that are going to make the district look great because they're going to Ivy League schools. But there's other kids out there that need help also, and the district is forgetting about them. I was in district office the 2 days before the board meeting at the beginning of the month. The president and the superintendent, I left papers for them. They sent it to another gentleman. I had to have another meeting. I've taken more time off school, off my day job and my night job to keep coming to these meetings, and nothing is being done for my son. Okay? He's only been in school 3 weeks this year. He's had no home instructions. I was promised that he would be helped for the Regents exam. I've had no one there. I've been calling, I've been emailing. Nothing's being done. I'm tired of the lies, being swept under the rug and being ignored. Now I'm going to be a very loud voice. Like I said in August, I'm like a hemorrhoid. I am not going away, and it's going to get a lot worse. Okay? Because I'm going to the papers, I'm going to the news, I'm going to a lot over this. You guys change the rules every time I come into a meeting. I promise this. Last school meeting I had to go to, I wasted a half hour because they say there's work there for my son. There was no work. Didn't come till the following week. But I waited around a half hour. My time is precious too. I work 2 full-time jobs. I'm tired of constantly going to board meetings, to the school, and nothing's being done. You have no home instructors? That's not my problem. My son deserves an education. He had a tutor last year, but you guys had a yanker, but you had nobody in place to take over for that tutor. Okay? He failed health. I had to fight for it. You guys give him a credit for foreign language, but he failed the final. Well, what are we supposed to do now? Oh, we're going to have to take the credit from him. That's not his fault. You guys screwed up. That's your problem, not his. He should be penalized for it, or any other kid. You people look down at all these kids. You don't do nothing to help them. I have not once heard somebody say, we're going to do something for kids in need. Oh, you haven't done nothing for these kids. I had 2 other kids that graduated from the school district. They're ashamed to see what's going on now because they're 10 years younger, 12 years older than my son. People better start waking up because remember, you guys were all elected. I haven't seen anything getting done for these kids. This is my 2nd meeting since August. They stopped the meeting in the beginning of the month because they gave me a meeting in the school. Wowee! Nothing got done. Thank you very much. But I'll keep coming to these meetings. I'm going to keep emailing, and I'm going to be contacting a lot of people because I'm nowhere near done. He has a 504 and an IEP, and you guys squashed his IEP because he's too late in the school year for it. Cost me $4,000 to have that test done. Have a nice night, because you don't care about nothing or nobody.
Is there anyone else who wishes to comment? All right. Could I have a motion for adjournment? Mr. Lumia? Second, Mr. Selma. All those in favor? Unanimous.